I still remember the exact moment I fell in love with Taehyun. It was at the university library, during finals week. He'd reached for the same chemistry textbook as me, our fingers brushing, and the world tilted on its axis. Even before I looked up into those warm brown eyes, my Omega instincts screamed alpha, but more than that, they whispered mine. "Sorry," he'd said, pulling his hand back with an embarrassed smile. "You take it. I can wait." But I didn't want him to wait. I didn't want him to go anywhere. We could share it? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Study together? That was 3 months ago. 3 perfect, impossible months where I learned that Taehyun wasn't just any alpha. He was kind, brilliant, and treated me like I was precious. He never once made me feel less than because of my secondary gender. When he held my hand walking across campus, it wasn't possessive. It was reverent. I should have known it was too good to be true. I should have asked more questions when he was vague about his family, when he always insisted we meet at my tiny apartment instead of his place. But I was 22 and drunk on first love, too intoxicated by his cinnamon cedar scent to think clearly. The night everything changed started like a dream. Taehyun had cooked dinner, badly, which made me laugh until my sides hurt. We'd curled up on my threadbare couch, his arms wrapped around me, my head tucked under his chin where I could feel his heartbeat. "Jiwon," he murmured into my hair. "I need to tell you something." My stomach clenched. Nothing good ever followed those words. "What is it?" "My family, they're not like us. They have expectations. My mother especially." He pulled back to look at me, his expression pained. "But I don't care what they think. I choose you. I'll always choose you." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. We made love that night with desperate intensity, like we were trying to fuse our souls together. My heat started unexpectedly. I wasn't due for another week, and Taehyun held me through it, whispering promises against my sweat-dampened skin. "Forever, boys." I woke up alone. At first, I thought he'd just stepped out for coffee. But his clothes were gone. His phone went straight to voicemail. I called 17 times that first day, each unanswered ring feeling like a knife between my ribs. By day 3, his number was disconnected. By week 2, I'd gone to his apartment, the address I'd found on a piece of mail he'd left behind, only to discover he'd never lived there. The confused tenant had never heard of anyone named Kong Taehyun. I felt like I was losing my mind. Had I imagined everything? But no, I had his hoodies in my closet, photos on my phone, the lingering ache of his bite on my shoulder that hadn't quite been a bonding mark. Then came the nausea. I stared at the positive pregnancy test in the dingy bathroom of my apartment, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. An Omega getting pregnant from a heat cycle was common, but I'd thought, we'd been careful before that night. One moment of lost control and now, I was going to have Taehyun's baby. The alpha who'd vanished like smoke. Who'd apparently lied about where he lived. Who'd made promises he never intended to keep. I cried until I had nothing left, curled on the bathroom floor with the test clutched to my chest. Then I got up, washed my face, and made a decision. I would do this alone. The pregnancy was brutal. Without an alpha's support, my Omega biology rebelled. I was sick constantly, weak, exhausted. I worked double shifts at the convenience store until my feet swelled so badly I couldn't wear shoes. My university dreams crumbled. I couldn't afford tuition and diapers. My parents had disowned me years ago when I presented as Omega. I had no one. Some nights, lying in bed with my hands on my growing belly, I hated Taehyun with a fire that burned hotter than my love ever had. Other nights, I missed him so desperately I couldn't breathe. I'd pull up his contact, still saved in my phone though the number was dead, and stare at his photo until my vision blurred with tears. "Where are you? Why did you leave? Did you ever love me at all?" I never got answers. Hanuel was born on a freezing January night. The labor was long and agonizing, made worse by the absence of an alpha to ease my pain. But the moment they placed my son in my arms, none of that mattered. He had Taehyun's eyes. The same warm brown that had made me fall in love in a library. The same gentle shape that crinkled when he smiled. "Hello, little star," I whispered, tracing his tiny face. Hanuel meant heaven, and that's what he was, my piece of heaven in a world that had become hell. The next 2 years blurred together in a haze of survival. I worked 3 jobs: convenience store clerk, night cleaning crew, weekend food delivery. Hanuel stayed with a neighbor during my shifts, an elderly Omega woman who charged me almost nothing because she remembered being young and alone too. We lived in a shoebox apartment with peeling wallpaper and a heater that barely worked. I wore the same 4 outfits in rotation, patched and repatched. Hanuel's clothes came from charity bins, his toys from the trash pile behind the toy store where I'd fish out the defective items. But he smiled. God, how he smiled. Just like his father. I never told him about Taehyun. What would I say? Your father was an alpha who loved me for 3 months and disappeared without a word? Better for Hanuel to think his father was dead than to know he'd been abandoned. I was wrestling our broken stroller through the door of the free clinic. Hanuel had been coughing for days and I was terrified when I felt it. That prickling awareness that meant an alpha was nearby. Not just any alpha. A powerful one. I looked up into the face of an elegant woman in a designer coat, her iron gray hair swept back, her eyes widening in recognition I didn't understand. You, she breathed. You're the Omega. From the photograph. My blood turned to ice. I'm sorry, do I know you? Her gaze dropped to Hanuel in my arms, and I watched her face transform. Shock, disbelief, and something that looked almost like joy. That child, she whispered. He has my son's eyes. The world tilted, just like it had in that library 2.5 years ago. This was Taehyun's mother. And somehow, impossibly, she'd been looking for me. I clutched Hanuel tighter, my Omega instincts screaming danger even as my mind raced to catch up. Mrs. Kong, because who else could this elegant, powerful woman be, took a step closer, and I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the broken stroller wheel. Don't, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Don't come near us. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked nothing like the intimidating alpha matriarch she clearly was. She looked like a grandmother seeing her grandson for the first time. Please. I've been searching for you for months. Ever since I found the photograph in Taehyun's room after. She stopped abruptly, pain flashing across her features. After what? The words escaped before I could stop them. After he abandoned me? After he lied about everything? Lied. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together in genuine confusion. What are you talking about? Hanuel whimpered against my chest, his small body hot with fever. The nurse had just called my number, and I was torn between my son's needs and this impossible conversation. Mrs. Kong noticed immediately. Your child is sick. It wasn't a question. Her alpha senses would have picked up on his distress instantly. Please, let me help. We can talk after the doctor sees him. Every instinct I had screamed not to trust her. The Kong family, whatever they were, had taken Taehyun from me. But Hanuel's fever had spiked again, and the worry gnawing at my chest overrode everything else. Fine, I said coldly. But then you leave us alone. I expected her to wait in the lobby. Instead, she followed us into the examination room, standing quietly in the corner while the doctor checked Hanuel's breathing. Bronchitis, the doctor said. Not serious yet, but it could become pneumonia if left untreated. He needed antibiotics, rest, and a humidifier to help him breathe. My heart sank. Antibiotics meant money I didn't have. The free clinic provided the consultation, but medications were another story. I'll cover it, Mrs. Kong said immediately, as if reading my thoughts. She probably was. Alphas were notoriously good at sensing Omega distress. All of it. Please. Pride warred with desperation. Pride lost. I'll pay you back. I don't want your money, Jiwon. The use of my name startled me. I hadn't told her what it was. I want to understand what happened. Why my grandson has been living in poverty when the Kong family has more resources than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. The pharmacy was attached to the clinic. Mrs. Kong paid for Hanuel's medication without blinking, then added children's vitamins, fever reducers, and a tiny stuffed bear that made my son's eyes light up despite his illness. There's a cafe next door, she said gently. Please. Give me 1 hour to explain. I should have refused. I should have taken Hanyul home. But something in her expression, genuine desperation mixed with guilt, made me nod. The cafe was warm, a luxury I'd almost forgotten existed. Mrs. Kong ordered hot chocolate for Hanyul and tea for us, plus pastries that my son attacked with the hunger of a child who didn't always know where his next meal was coming from. The alpha's sharp intake of breath told me she'd noticed. "Start talking," I said, once Hanyul was distracted with food and his new bear. "You have 58 minutes. Mrs. Kong wrapped her hands around her teacup, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. 7 months ago, my husband suffered a massive stroke. He needed emergency surgery, specialized treatment only available in Switzerland. Taehyun went with him. They left within hours of getting the news. My stomach dropped. What? My husband is the chairman of Kong Industries. The media would have had a field day if they'd known he was incapacitated. We kept it completely quiet. No phones, no contact with anyone outside our immediate family. It was necessary for the company's stability." She looked at me directly. "Taehyun fought us on it. He kept saying he needed to tell someone, needed to make a call. We thought he meant business contacts. We had no idea. He never told you about me. It wasn't a question. Not a word. You have to understand, Taehyun has always been private about his personal life. He hated how the family scrutinized his every relationship, how potential partners saw dollar signs instead of him." Her voice softened. "I didn't know you existed until 2 months ago when I was packing up his room and found a photograph tucked in his wallet. You, laughing at something off camera, your hair messy, wearing his hoodie. He'd written on the back, 'My Jiwon. My everything.'" Tears burned my eyes. I remembered that day. We'd gone to the park, and Taehyun had insisted on taking my picture when I'd stolen his hoodie because the wind was cold. I'd thought the moment was forgotten. He'd carried it with him. Even to Switzerland. "I hired investigators," Mrs. Kong continued. "But you'd moved from your university apartment, changed jobs, essentially disappeared. I've had people looking for months." Her gaze dropped to Hanyul. "I never imagined. How old is he?" 2 years and 3 months. She did the math instantly, her face paling. "Taehyun left 2 years and 9 months ago. You were pregnant when he disappeared." "I was pregnant when he abandoned me," I corrected bitterly. "Though I didn't know it yet." "He doesn't know." Mrs. Kang's voice was barely a whisper. "Oh God, Taehyun doesn't know he has a son." The certainty in her words shook something loose in my chest. All this time, I'd imagined scenarios. Taehyun knowing and not caring, Taehyun deliberately cutting ties, Taehyun regretting everything about me. But the idea that he simply didn't know. "His father's recovery took longer than expected," Mrs. Kong said. "Taehyun only returned to Korea 3 weeks ago. He's been searching for you, Jiwon. Every spare moment, he's been trying to find the Omega he fell in love with." She pulled out her phone, showing me message after message to investigators, private detectives, even posts on anonymous forums asking for help locating someone. All looking for me. Why didn't he just call? My voice cracked. "He tried. Your number was disconnected. He went to your old apartment, you'd moved. Your university had no forwarding information due to privacy policies. It was like you'd vanished." She leaned forward. "He's been destroying himself trying to find you. He thinks you hate him for leaving without explanation. He has no idea that you—" Her eyes went to Hanyul again. My son had fallen asleep against my shoulder, his breathing wheezy but steadier with the medication beginning to work. His small hand clutched the stuffed bear, and his face, so heartbreakingly like Taehyun's, was peaceful. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't let him back into our lives just to have him leave again. I can't do that to Hanyul. What if I promised you he won't?" Mrs. Kong reached across the table but stopped short of touching my hand, respecting Omega boundaries. "What if I told you that my son has been half alive without you? That he refused an arranged marriage, turned down 3 suitable Omegas, and told me he'd rather die alone than bond with anyone who wasn't you? Hope was a dangerous thing. It had nearly destroyed me once before." "Let me help you," Mrs. Kong said. "Not because you're the mother of my grandson, though that would be enough, but because you're clearly the person my son loves more than life itself. Let me give you a safe place to stay, make sure Hanyul gets proper medical care, and—" She took a deep breath. "Let me tell Taehyun the truth. That he's a father. That you've been struggling alone because of circumstances neither of you could control. And if he doesn't want us?" The question tore from somewhere deep in my chest. If he's moved on, or the reality of a child is too much? Mrs. Kang's smile was sad but certain. "Then I'll still help you, because you're family now whether Taehyun acts like it or not. But Jiwon—" Her alpha presence pulsed gently, not threatening but reassuring. "I've never seen my son love anything the way he loved you in that photograph. And when he meets this beautiful child—" She gestured to sleeping Hanyul. "Everything will change." I looked down at my son, at his flushed cheeks and tangled hair, at the life I'd built from nothing through sheer stubborn will. Then I looked at Mrs. Kang, at the hope and determination in her eyes. "Taehyun comes back to Seoul next Friday," she said quietly. "Let me arrange it. Please." I thought of empty refrigerators and broken heaters. Of Hanyul's 2 small shoes and my own exhaustion. Of 2 years of questions that maybe, finally, could have answers. "Okay," I breathed. "But I tell him. About Hanyul. That's not your story to share." Mrs. Kang nodded, something like respect crossing her face. "Deal." Neither of us knew that Taehyun was already on his way home. Or that he'd arrive in less than 72. Mrs. Kang had moved us into a guest house on the Kang estate, a small cottage that was larger than any place I'd ever lived. Hanyul was recovering quickly with proper medicine, warm rooms, and 3 meals a day. I tried not to think about how easily wealth solved problems that had nearly broken me. I had 3 days to prepare myself. 3 days to figure out what I'd say when I saw Taehyun's face again. I got 12 hours. I was in the cottage kitchen making Hanyul lunch when I felt it, that electric awareness that meant a powerful alpha was nearby. But this wasn't Mrs. Kang's controlled, maternal presence. This was raw, overwhelming, achingly familiar. Cinnamon and cedar. My hands froze on the sandwich I was making. Through the window, I saw him crossing the garden path, and my heart stopped beating entirely. Taehyun looked different. Older. His shoulders were broader, his jaw sharper, his hair longer than he'd kept it before. But those eyes, those warm brown were the same. And right now, they were locked on Mrs. Kang, who was speaking rapidly, trying to slow him down. "Mom, I don't care about jet lag." His voice carried through the window, deeper than I remembered. "You said you found something important. If it's about the company, it can wait. I need to keep looking for—" He stopped mid-sentence. His head snapped toward the cottage. Alpha senses picking up on a scent he'd probably never forgotten. Our eyes met through the kitchen window. The world collapsed to that single moment. His face went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Shock, disbelief, hope, pain, love. So much love it hurt to see. Then he was running. I barely had time to step back before the door burst open and Taehyun was there, in the cottage, in my space, close enough to touch. His scent overwhelmed me, making my Omega instincts keen with recognition and longing. Jiwon. My name came out like a prayer. "Oh God, Jiwon, you're real. You're here." He reached for me, then stopped himself, hands hovering in the air like he was afraid I'd disappear. I looked everywhere. I called, I went to your apartment. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left. My father collapsed and we had to leave immediately and they wouldn't let me contact anyone and I tried to find you as soon as I got back but you were gone and—" "Taehyun." I cut him off, my own voice shaking. "Stop." He fell silent immediately, but his whole body was trembling. This close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes, the weight he'd lost, the haunted look of someone who'd been searching for something precious they'd lost. "You left me," I said, and years of pain bled into those 3 words. "You made promises and then you vanished like you'd never existed." I thought. I had to stop, swallow hard. I thought you'd used me and thrown me away. No. The word was almost a growl. Never. Jiwon, I love you. I've loved you since that day in the library. Every single day in Switzerland I thought about you. Worried about you. Tried to figure out how to find you again. He took a shuddering breath. I was coming to tell you about my father before we left, but he collapsed so suddenly there was no time. My phone was taken away, security protocols, and by the time I got back, I was gone, I finished. I had to leave my apartment. Couldn't afford it anymore after. Mama? We both froze. Hanuel stood in the doorway to the living room, his new bear clutched in one hand, his eyes huge as he stared at the strange alpha in our space. Mama, who's that? I watched Taehyun's face as he looked at our son for the first time. Watched him take in the familiar eyes, the shape of his nose, the way Hanuel tilted his head exactly like Taehyun did when curious. The alpha's knees actually buckled. He caught himself on the counter, staring at Hanuel like he was seeing a ghost. How old? He whispered. 2 years and 3 months. His eyes shot to mine, doing the math instantly, understanding crashing over him like a wave. You were pregnant. When I left. You were pregnant and the devastation on his face was almost too much to bear. Oh God, Jiwon. You've been raising him alone. I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. Just nodded. Taehyun sank to his knees right there on the kitchen floor, tears streaming down his face. I have a son. We have a son and I wasn't there. I wasn't there for you, for him, for any of it. His hands fisted in his hair. What kind of alpha am I? What kind of father? Mama? Hanuel's voice was worried now. Why is the man crying? I knelt beside our son, smoothing his hair. It's okay, baby. He's just surprised. Happy surprised. Taehyun looked up at me, his face raw with emotion. Is it okay if I understood what he was asking. Slowly I nodded. He approached carefully, moving like Hanuel was made of glass. Hi, he said softly, voice thick. My name is Taehyun. What's yours? Hanuel, my son said shyly, hiding partially behind my leg. It means heaven. Mama says I'm her piece of heaven. Something broke in Taehyun's expression. That's a perfect name. You are heaven, aren't you? He glanced at me, asking silent permission, and when I nodded again, he continued. Hanuel, I'm your father. The silence that followed was deafening. Hanuel's eyes went impossibly wide. My father? Like the other kids have? Yes, Taehyun whispered. Exactly like that. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. I didn't know about you, but that's not an excuse. I should have been here. I should have. He looked at me helplessly. You didn't know, I said quietly. I tried to find you, to tell you, but you disappeared completely. Your number was dead, your address was fake. The address I gave you was my actual apartment, Taehyun interrupted, confused. I lived there for 3 years. The tenant said no one named Kang Taehyun ever lived there. Understanding dawned on his face. I used my middle name on the lease. For privacy. Kang Taehyun would have attracted too much attention, so legally it was listed under Jun Taehyun. He looked sick. You went there looking for me and couldn't find any trace. You must have thought that you'd lied about everything, I confirmed. That nothing between us was real. Everything was real. He said it with such fierce intensity that my Omega instincts responded, recognizing truth. Every word, every touch, every promise. Jiwon, I meant it all. Hanuel, with the fearlessness of a 2-year-old, suddenly stepped forward and poked Taehyun's knee. You have my eyes. Taehyun laughed, the sound half-sub. You have my eyes, little star. And my nose. And apparently my grandmother's stubborn chin. He looked at me with wonder. He's perfect. You made something perfect. We made him, I corrected softly. Together. Can I hold him? The question was tentative, almost afraid. I looked at Hanuel. Do you want to meet your father properly? My son considered this, then nodded and held out his arms. Taehyun lifted him like he was the most precious thing in the world, which I supposed he was. Hanuel settled against his chest, and I watched my son breathe in his father's scent, watched his little body relax in recognition of pack, of family, of home. I'm not going anywhere, Taehyun said, looking between Hanuel and me. Ever again. I don't care what it takes, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to both of you. Mrs. Kong appeared in the doorway, tears in her eyes. I told you, she said softly. I told you everything would change. She was right. Everything already had. Taehyun didn't leave. Not that day, not the next, not the one after that. He showed up every morning at the cottage with fresh pastries and coffee, sitting on the floor to play blocks with Hanuel while I watched from the couch, my heart doing complicated things in my chest. Trust, I was learning, didn't rebuild itself overnight. You don't have to do this, I told him on the fourth day, watching him help Hanuel build a tower. The guilt payments. We're fine here. His head snapped up, hurt flashing across his features. Is that what you think this is? Guilt. Isn't it? I kept my voice neutral, but my Omega instincts were screaming at me to back down, to not challenge the alpha who smelled like home. Taehyun carefully extracted himself from Hanuel's game and crossed to where I sat. He knelt in front of me, close enough that his scent wrapped around me, but not touching. Jiwon, I'm not here out of guilt. I'm here because you and Hanuel are my family. Because I love you. Because I never stopped loving you. You don't know me anymore, I whispered. I'm not the same person I was. Neither am I. His eyes held mine. But I want to know who you are now. I want to know everything I missed. And I want you to know me, the real me, not the college student hiding from his family's expectations. That's when Mrs. Kong dropped the real bomb. She invited us to dinner at the main house, not just us but the entire Kong family. Including Taehyun's father, the formidable Chairman Kong, who'd recovered from his stroke but whose word was still law in this family. I can't, I said immediately. They'll hate me. An Omega who trapped their son, got pregnant. You didn't trap anyone, Taehyun said fiercely. And if anyone even suggests that Taehyun will handle his father, Mrs. Kong interrupted smoothly. But Jiwon, you need to understand something. You're not some secret to be hidden. You're the mother of the Kong heir. That makes you family whether anyone likes it or not. The dinner was as terrifying as I'd imagined. Chairman Kong sat at the head of the massive table, his eyes sharp despite his recovery. Taehyun's younger sister, Yuna, was there too, watching everything with curious intensity. Hanuel, bless him, was on his best behavior, sitting in a special high chair between Taehyun and me, completely unaware of the tension. So, Chairman Kong said finally, his voice gravelly. This is the Omega who made my son abandon his duties for nearly 3 years. I felt Taehyun tense beside me, but before he could speak, I met the chairman's gaze directly. Something in me, some piece of steel forged during 2 years of solo survival, refused to back down. With respect, Chairman Kong, your son didn't abandon anything for me. He left to save your life. And I raised your grandson alone, in poverty, because your family's security measures made it impossible for us to find each other. My voice didn't shake. So if you're looking to blame someone, I suggest you look elsewhere. The silence was deafening. Then Chairman Kong did something unexpected. He laughed, a rusty and used sound. She has spine. But the Kong family needs more people willing to speak truth. He turned to Taehyun. This one is a fighter. Don't lose her again. I don't intend to, father. The chairman's eyes moved to Hanuel, and his expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. And this is my grandson. Hanuel, picking up on the attention, waved his spoon. Hi, Grandpa. I watched the most powerful businessman in Korea melt like butter. After dinner, Taehyun asked me to walk with him in the garden. Hanuel had fallen asleep against his grandfather's shoulder, another impossibility I was still processing, and Mrs. Kong had shooed us out. There's something I need to tell you, Taehyun said once we were alone among the roses. About why my family separated us so completely. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? My father's stroke wasn't natural. Someone poisoned him, a business rival trying to take over the company. That's why the security was so extreme, why we couldn't risk any communication. They thought I might be targeted next. His jaw clenched. The threat was neutralized 6 months ago, but by then, I'd already lost you. You could have died, I breathed, horror washing over me. Taehyun, you could have. But I didn't. And neither did my father. We're safe now, Jiwon. Truly safe. He took my hands, the first real touch we'd shared since that day in the kitchen. Which means I can finally do what I should have done 2.5 years ago. He sank to one knee. My heart stopped. I don't have a ring yet because I wanted you to choose it. I don't have a perfect speech because every word I've practiced sounds wrong. His voice shook. But Jiwon, I love you. I love our son. I love the family we made even when the universe tried to tear us apart. And I'm asking, begging, will you let me bond with you? Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you and Hanyul are my everything? Tears blurred my vision. 2 years ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But 2 years of struggle had taught me to be careful with my heart. I'm scared, I admitted. Scared of losing myself again. Scared of depending on someone who might leave. Then don't depend on me, he said simply. Be my partner. My equal. I don't want you to give up anything, Jiwon. I want to build something together. A real home where Hanyul grows up knowing both his parents, where you finish your degree if you want, where we figure out this life side by side. His eyes shone. I'm not asking you to be my Omega. I'm asking you to be my mate. There's a difference. And there was. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, not like something to possess, but like someone to cherish. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll bond with you. I'll build that life with you. Taehyun surged up and kissed me, and it felt like coming home after a long, brutal journey. His scent wrapped around me, his arms held me like I was precious, and for the first time in 2 years, I let myself believe in forever again. When we returned to the house, we found Hanyul awake and playing with his grandfather and aunt, completely at ease in this new world of family and safety and love. Mama! Papa! He ran to us and Taehyun scooped him up, pulling me close so we stood there together. A real family, finally whole. Mrs. Kong appeared with champagne, her eyes suspiciously wet. I take it she said yes? She said yes. Taehyun confirmed, kissing my temple. Good. Chairman Kang's voice was gruff but warm. Now maybe my grandson can have siblings. This house is too quiet. I blushed furiously while Taehyun laughed, but looking around at this family who'd fought so hard to find us, who'd welcomed us without hesitation, I couldn't find it in myself to object. 3 months later, Taehyun and I bonded properly in a private ceremony. 6 months after that, I re-enrolled in university, this time studying business because I'd learned that power meant protecting the people you loved. And 1 year after that night in the garden, I stood in the nursery of our new home, not the estate, but a house we'd chosen together, watching Taehyun rock our daughter to sleep while Hanyul told his sister a story about stars. Happy, Taehyun murmured. I leaned against him, breathing in cinnamon and cedar, feeling the bond mark pulse with contentment on my neck. Happy, I confirmed. Finally, impossibly, completely happy.